All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to record a video here. So, the title of this video is probably going to be somewhat provocative. I'm planning on titling this video somewhere in the vicinity of how Paladin became the undisputed number one dueling Paladin in classic World of Warcraft. Um, so there's going to be a lot of people coming in that are probably just like, WTH or like, some variant of that. And so I just want to do like a quick TLDR on what the heck is going to be in this video, just in case they want to show up, and then mess off. But other than that, the video is probably going to be like an hour long. So I'm going to explain it in very simple terms. Then I'm going to showcase some footage as to what exactly has changed to make Paladin the number one PvP Paladin. Then I'm going to go into detail about like what certain matchups look like, minus like the mirror matchup. Because a lot of people have probably dueled Paladins, they've beaten the tar out of them, so they're probably coming here and being like, what the hell am I even talking about? So I'm going to go through an order. First, we'll talk about Rogue versus Paladin, then Shaman, and so forth down the list, so you can, navigate the video a little bit in case it doesn't have timestamps and try to figure out your class versus Paladin and why you probably lose at the highest levels of play. Okay, so TLDR here is that when it comes to dueling in classic World of Warcraft, for years now, there have been 3 classes that have extremely high win rates against every other class in the game, but they lose to one other class in the game, creating what I usually refer to as the Holy Trinity. Those 3 classes specifically are Soul Link Warlock. Notice that I'm talking about not just a class now, I'm talking about a spec. Every other spec a Warlock tends to lose, but Soul Link Warlock tends to beat every other class in the game, except for Paladins. Paladins have a noticeably high win rate against Warlocks. However, Paladins lose to mages. And it's just so you end up with this weird like rock paper scissors where it's like Paladins can beat Warlocks, Warlocks can beat mages, mages can beat Paladins. And what specifically with mages, it's Frost Mage specifically that has a high win rate against every other class in the game, but they lose to Warlock, SO Warlock specifically, but they can beat Paladins, but Paladins beat Warlocks, and rock, paper, scissors, it goes. So the moral of the story is that for years now, it has been the case that if any one of these classes can figure out how to beat the other, they will end up being the undisputable dueling king of classic World of Warcraft, right? So if Warlocks ever figure out how to beat, if mages ever figure out how to beat Warlocks, they'll be the undisputed king of PvP, of dueling PvP. If Warlocks ever figure out how to beat Paladins, they'll be the undisputed king. And of course, if Paladins ever figure out how to beat mages, they will be the undisputed king. So that brings us to some visual proof as to how the hell us Paladins have started consistently beating mages in PvP, breaking this little rock, paper, scissors cycle and making us the undisputed king of dueling PvP in Classic World of Warcraft. Okay, so I'm going to play this video a little bit in full, but the moral of the story here is that, let's go back a little bit so we can see our stats. So basically, I have 10 arcane resistance on my paladin right now. I'm going to drink a magic resistance potions that pops it up to 16 arcane resist. This mage over here is not wearing any minus arcane resistance gear whatsoever. This is very useful for us because the vast majority of mages in PvP, they'll have like minus 40 to all resistances come AQ 40. They get their, like Don Julio's version of their ring, their AQ, their Alterac Valley ring, which has minus 20 magic resist. They get another item, I think it's a neck piece or something that has another minus 20 magic resist. They can go up to minus 60 magic resist, but they almost never do that because it requires them to wear a staff that has like no stamina on it, and that in and of itself has issues in the matchup versus Paladin. So this is very useful information because it means that we're gonna see what trying to be sheeped at 60 arcane resistance looks like, and then later we'll see what trying to be sheeped at 100 arcane resistance looks like. And that's very important, because if I have 100 arcane resistance against a mage, it's going to look like a 60 if they have that minus 40 magic resist. So we'll start playing the video here. So the reason why arcane resistance, we discovered, and by we I mean me, why we're starting to use arcane resistance to beat mages in duels rather consistently is because it breaks us out of sheeps incredibly quickly. As near as I can tell, the heartbeat duration for arcane resistance starts at the 6-second mark, and then it'll do a heartbeat resistance check every 2 seconds after that. So you'll have a heartbeat resistance check at the 6-second mark exactly, and then you'll have it at 8 seconds and 10 seconds and 12 seconds and so forth and so on. Each of those heartbeat resistance checks have a chance to break the paladin out of the sheep, equal to their chance to fully resist the sheep. Okay, you follow me on that? So, for example, at 60% arcane, at 60 arcane resist, a paladin has, let me think, oh boy, let me pull up a calculator here really quick. It's actually going to be, I want 7.5 times 3. 40 resistance is a 15% chance to resist. So a 60 resistance is going to be a 22.5% chance to resist. However, every class in the game also has a 5% base chance to resist spells. So at 60 arcane resist, each of these heartbeat duration ticks is having a 27.5% chance to break us out of these sheeps, which is why the sheeps are lasting an incredibly short duration of time on average. My best estimate is that at 60% arcane resistance, we're breaking out of sheeps around about the 22nd or the 16 or the 22nd, 16-second mark, somewhere around there. At 100 arcane resist, we'll see this in a hot second. So we're looking at the seconds right now, right? That's the first heartbeat tick has happened. Second heartbeat tick has happened. Third heartbeat tick. Fourth, and we're out. Okay? So that lasted like what? About 20 seconds on average. Now I'm putting on my two 20 arcane resist rings. We shoot up to 100 arcane resist. Now I'm going to pause the video right here for a second, okay? What we are about to see here is proof that the heartbeat ticks start at the 6-second mark. For a long time, I couldn't tell if they were starting at the 6-second mark or if they were starting at the 10-second mark. Turns out they start at the 6-second mark, and we're going to see that right here. So our boy is going to put a max rank sheep on us, okay? That's 1 second, 2 seconds. So if it is at the 6-second mark, we should be breaking out of the sheep at 44 seconds or right at the turnover of 43 seconds, right? One of those two. And as we can see, I'll try to pause it. Boom, we're out of the sheep. So after 6 seconds of being sheeped, we can pretty much conclude that the heartbeat ticks are starting. And each of those ticks at 100% resist have a 30% chance to break me out. I could be wrong about that. Let me pull up the calculator here again. Let's see. So we go 100, divide that by 40 equals, multiply that by 15, because I know what it is, at 15% chance to resist, and then we add 5% to that. Let me double check that really fast. So 7.5 times 2 is 40. We have at least two 40s, so I know we're at least at 30% chance to break out. And then we have half of it. Yeah, so it should be 37.5. So our base chance to break out here is 37.5. But then, of course, everyone has that extra 5%. So there's a whopping 42.5% chance to break out at the 6-second, 8-second, 10-second mark. Holy balls. So moral of the story is we've discovered that we can use arcane resistance to basically break out of sheeps incredibly early. And this changes the nature of the map up in terrible, horrible, no good ways for the mage, making them have an incredibly low win rate percent. You don't want to start dueling the mage in arcane resist gear. But as the mage gets low on mana, once they drop down to about 30% mana, and they're basically surviving just off of trying to kill you, sheeping you, then getting back to full mana, then trying to kill you, then sheeping you, and getting back to full mana. Once that whole routine starts, you as a paladin can literally start swapping over to arcane resistance gear, and they just can't ever get enough mana back to threaten you again, and they just end up being completely boned. So anyways, we'll do one more sheep here and see how long it takes. So he sheeps me, so I'll start counting the heartbeat ticks. That's the first tick is now, second tick, third tick, and we're out. Okay, so so hopefully that little video there shows how on Earth we've managed to get out of the rock, paper, scissors thing. And basically, we don't have any paladins or any class in the game that has a winning matchup against paladin anymore. Okay, so now we're going to transition into the part of the video where I very slowly and very painfully talk about each of the matchups in turn. Eventually, I'll get to talking about the mage down the line. But hopefully that will serve as a good TLDR of what has happened in the meta that is causing paladins to be like the class to beat now. Okay, cool. Let me take a drink of water, and we'll talk about rogue versus paladin, very TLDR. I have more detailed videos on each and every one of these matchups that have basically been on my channel for like a million years. Like, how to paladin versus how to beat hunters, warriors, and blah, 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 blah. This is just going to be the very quick and dirty version of it. All right, paladin versus rogues. So the first thing to note about paladins is if we go back to the Holy Trinity, remember I talked about it specifically SL warlocks that are beating up everybody, and it's specifically frost mages that are beating everybody. It's not specifically this type of paladin that's beating everybody. There's actually like 6 variants of paladin that kind of beat up everybody, but they lose to a bunch of other stuff, right? So, for example, Deep Ret Paladins actually have a winning matchup. Control Ret specifically, Deep Control Ret Paladins have a winning matchup against mages. They can actually beat mages, and therefore they can technically get out of the Holy Trinity issue. But they start losing to Prot Warriors, especially Diamond Flasking Prot Warriors. They have a losing matchup against Warrior, and so in a weird way, they can't get out of Holy Trinity problem despite having a winning matchup against mages. The exact same thing happens versus with rogues. Reckoning Paladins, any kind of Reckoning Paladin will absolutely destroy rogues and are actually the worst matchup that rogues have in Classic World of Warcraft. Basically, they just have to have enough armor to be armor and HP to survive the rogue's attentions, and if they can achieve that, they're going to eventually RNG the rogue out of existence. If you want a really good example of this, Holy Saxy Boy versus Peo. The two of them have some really good back and forth duels together where Peo's doing everything in his power to beat the Reckoning Paladin, but he's just getting absolutely slammed. And some top tier play on both of their sides there. But yeah, any kind of Reckoning Paladin will just absolutely smork. Thank you very much. Will just absolutely smork a rogue. If it's not a Reckoning Paladin, then their best bet typically is to fight the rogue using a shield for a long period of time and using Seal of Righteousness and Edward the Odd. Since an Edward the Odd proc will basically allow the Paladin to damn near full heal themselves instantaneously with a Holy Light, and that fight with a shield is going to last so long. A combination of Edward the Odd sword and board, it just makes fighting the Paladin an absolute effing nightmare. Eventually, the paladin can swap out of the one-handed Edward the Odd versus the rogue. Like once the rogue has burned through all their cooldowns to try to kill the paladin, then the paladin can switch over to a two-hander or to a more aggressive one-hander, like a slow speed one-hander. Well, they're not a reckoning paladin, so they probably want to go two-hander. But basically, you just have to play the long endurance fight with the rogue, and a combination of shield. Just wearing a shield makes it hard enough for the rogue. If they don't have Reckoning, but Edward the Odd just pushes it over the edge into being almost impossible for the rogue to win that matchup. The paladin does have to use other weird little items because otherwise the rogue will just gouge, reset, gouge, reset, gouge, reset until the end of time. So they have to either use the Mug of Hurt to get the 10-second slow proc on the rogue so they can't do the gouge reset, or they have to get a Dazzling Longsword, which won't let the rogue go invisible for like 30 seconds to stop the gouge reset. But a combination of Edward the Odd and those two items and a shield, just an absolute effing nightmare for the rogue. That's assuming you're not a Reckoning Paladin. Reckoning Paladins are the apex predator of Classic WoW dueling, though. Be that a heal Reckoning Paladin, which is a new spec that I came up with recently and has been showing great promises in duels, or a Holy Reckoning Paladin, or your classic Reckoning Paladin. All of those classes just absolutely dumpster rogues. What tends to happen is it's like even if you get jumped in open world PvP as a Reckoning Paladin, and they do it correctly. Like, let's say I'm playing a Reckoning Paladin and I get opened up on by a rogue, and I'm counting the how many Reckoning charges I have. And the rogue very wisely, drinks a free action potion right before I'm about to stun them. Or let's say they don't, and I throw a stun into them, and it just magically resists because they're an orc and there's a 20% chance to resist. Even under those circumstances, how you play it as a Reckoning Paladin is you swing your two-handed Rec Bomb into the rogue for what it's worth. Odds they have evasion running, so you're not really going to get much out of that. Maybe if you get lucky, you'll take out half their life in the Rec Bomb, but then you immediately switch over to an Edward the Odd Sword and Board. Because your first stun basically resisted, so you kind of have to go to plan B. So for a Reckoning Paladin, plan B is Edward the Odd and a shield. For every other Paladin, plan A is Edward the Odd and a shield. All right, cool. Moving on. Shaman versus Paladin is literally, I'll just do this so people can actually see where we're at. Shaman versus Paladin is a secret mana war between the two of them. There's some great videos. Like if you want to see what this looks like at the highest level of play, there's a video titled Drakova versus Two Cocky Shamans. I'll pause the video and pull it up really fast so I can, while I talk about this, we can play it over it. So let me pause this. All right, we got the high definition going. Let's see here. I've got to turn off the sound here so I can talk. I'll let this play in the background, but this is one of my favorite videos of all times. So if you're not playing a Reckoning Paladin, the TLDR on all of this is that you're in a mana war with the Shaman. But if you're Holy Reckoning Paladins, as long as they're hitting certain breakpoints in their plus healing gear, in their gearing, and their mana bar is thick enough, they tend to win rather consistently a healing fight or a mana war versus a Shaman, especially in duels. Deep Holy Paladins, so Holy Shock Paladins or Shock Eye Paladins. A Shock Eye Paladin is a Paladin that has both Holy Shock and Eye for an Eye. They can win mana wars pretty easily. Any Paladin that has Eye for an Eye and the ability to heal in combat can win this matchup extremely easily because the Eye for an Eye procs do really terrible things to the DPS of Shamans when they're trying to kill you. Basically, there's a window for them to kill you where it's like, let's say they're hard casting lightning bolts into you and you're healing yourself. If one of those, if the Paladin heals to full and then one of those lightning bolts crits, there's an opportunity. The next lightning bolt crits. There's an opportunity there. How do I put this? It takes Shamans 2 seconds to cast a lightning bolt. It takes Paladins 2.5 seconds to cast their holy light. Okay? The lightning bolts have some travel time, so in reality, they are closer to, like, 2.2, 2.3 seconds to make contact with the paladin, right? Because there's some travel time involved there. However, if the paladin's, like, healing himself and the shaman's going lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, and the paladin's going healing and healing and healing, there's some interesting scenarios where the paladin heals themselves to full right before getting smacked in the face by a lightning bolt. If that lightning bolt crits, there's a really good chance that the next lightning bolt coming in will also hit and crit before they can catch a holy light, and that's like the kill opportunity for like a shaman, where they can earth shock, interrupt, and then go into, like, their chain lightning kamehameha or whatever the hell, and hope that they kill the paladin. Eye for an eye completely shuts that down, because it's relying on the paladin both healing themselves to full and for the lightning bolt that's currently in the air to crit them, and for them to get off their lightning bolt attack, their next lightning cast, ahead of the paladin's heal. Get it in the air ahead of the paladin's heal, if you're following me on that. Except what happens is the eye for an eye causes a second worth of up to a second's worth of spell pushback on their lightning bolt cast, completely shutting down that kill opportunity. Whew. All right. Anyways, so any paladin that can both heal in combat and has eye for an eye, they just shamans just cannot generate enough DPS or kill opportunity windows to actually win a mana war versus them. And versus any other paladin, they usually just kind of use their healing potions and their whipperoo tubers or their trinkets, or their grenade stuns and whatnot to survive, like, scary situations. And shamans just don't have enough mana efficiency to be able to out-efficiency the paladin, and they just die basically in mana wars. The other scenario that takes place is what we're going to see in this video right here. But this is a Ret Reckoning Paladin. Ret Reckoning Paladins do not have heal in combat whatsoever, so they're very much a kill the shamans before the shamans kill me kind of scenario. But between bubble and just raw standing HP and all their combat capabilities and their trinkets and burrower shell and all that jazz, they can very easily fight this out. So this part of the video is really good because he used bubble to kill one of the two shamans. This shaman has already used his nature's swiftness. I do believe he came around the corner, used his nature's swiftness to instantly put a chain lightning into Drakova. So Drakova is down his bubble, but the shaman is also down his Kamehameha. Okay? So we get to see what one of these fights looks like when it's just a paladin versus a shaman. I don't know. This is about as cut and dry as it gets at the highest level. So he runs at him. Okay, cool. The grenade is resisted. That happens. Okay. You can see he's waiting here. Still beating on him. There goes Burrower Shell. There goes the Nova. His Burrower Shell probably has no HP. And our boy gets killed. There's some interesting elements here. If you slow down the video. So that Fire Nova that's hitting him right now probably does close to, if it didn't crit, it does about 900 damage. His Burrower Shell also has about 900 HP. His Burrower Shell is still visibly active on him, but for all extents and purposes, it has no HP left. The Shaman has activated his Elemental Attunement Trinket, which is part of a Shaman's Kamehameha toolkit. This chain lightning that it basically 20% increased nature, fire, frost damage, or whatever the hell, but at 20% increased mana cost. This chain lightning that this shaman is charging up on Drakova right now is going to do, I forget, man. I want to say that when it crits, it's either going to hit him for like 1,500 damage, or it's going to crit for like over 3k. It definitely crits him. Drakova's looking at his HP bar, and he's like, I don't even know if I have enough HP to survive this thing if it crits. If I can survive it, then the shaman's dead if I die. But there's like a 30% chance or 35% chance, somewhere around there, that this chain lightning is going to crit. Drakova doesn't like the look of his HP bar. So he Whipperroot tubers right there. He takes the time to look at the results of the Whipperroot tuber. This is a average Whipperroot tuber roll. It didn't crit heal or anything like that. He's going to bandage right before this thing hits him. So he's trying to get a bandage tick off because he still is like, nah, maybe I could use another, 200 HP. Doesn't quite get it in time. It does, in fact, hit him. It does, in fact, crit him. Oh, I guess I was wrong about the 3,000 damage crit. He takes 2,000, almost 2,100 damage in the crit. You can see the eye for an eye reflect damage on the Shaman here. Oh, I'm also thinking about there's potentially an Earth Shock behind this thing that can also theoretically crit and do like 1,000 damage. I take that back. It'll do like 1,600 damage on the crit, like 800 base. I don't know, man. It's got the attunement thing going on. Maybe the Earth Shock can also do some stuff. But theoretically, there's an Earth Shock behind this, but the Shaman's out of mana, right? Drakova does end up taking another 900 fucking damage, like 966. He takes 966 damage because the... What is it? Lightning Shield on the Shaman is also affected by the plus 20% damage from the Elemental Attunement, and that thing can also fucking crit. So he damn near dies to the stupid-ass Lightning Shield, but he ended up having enough HP, and that ends up being the end of the clip, right? Really interesting clip showcasing how Reckoning basically deals with Shamans. But you can see it's a combination of, it's simultaneously a mana war, but it's also kind of a kill them before they kill you. Because the only reason Drakova didn't actually die is because the Shaman ran out of mana. Right? The Shaman ran out of mana. Let's see how much mana he had when he started this fight. Okay, so... Frontline was the guy. So we only know what the frig's mana bar. But he just murders him. So that's cute. So he should be bubbling here any second. He'll wait for the last possible moment to bubble. Okay, kills him. And now we get to see Frontline. Frontline might have started that fight less than full mana. Like, unironically, he might have started that fight less than full mana. But he did, like, Nature Swiftness out of Chain Lightning, did some Earth Shocks, probably was responsible for putting down that totem, blah, 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 blah. He must mana pot or something during this fight. I'll keep an eye on his mana bar. Yeah, because without mana potion, he just doesn't have enough mana to threaten Drakova. And Drakova knows it. So he just goes on over here and starts beating the crap out of him. I know it. He knows it. Damn, man. Yeah. So if he had more mana, he might have been able to kill Drakova here. And I say heavily on the might because he needs that Chain Lightning to crit. Okay, that's got a 35% chance. Then he needs the Earth Shock after that to crit. That has like a 35% chance. So if he can make two 35% chance rolls there, then he's good. But he just doesn't have the mana. It takes a lot of mana to put a Paladin down. If we go back to what the frig's mana bar when he started this stuff. So they opened with a Frost. Let's see how much mana he has by the time he dies. Okay, yeah, we got the other Shaman's mana bar there for just a split second. Okay, Frontline. Yeah, he probably started this down about a third mana. But What the Frig started it a hell of a lot more. Oh, he's just going to be stunned to death and murdered. Right. So, moral of the story here is that against the Reckoning Paladins, it's all about kill them before they kill you. It's not really a mana war. But against every other Paladin, they just kind of stand there and out-heal the Shaman, and the Shaman just kind of runs out of mana and dies. That's pretty much the TLDR of that. So, alright, moving on. Alright, let's see. Next one, what are we up to? Control Z here. Druid versus Paladin. Druid versus Paladin is very interesting in the sense that neither of them can actually kill each other. It's very annoying. This is probably one of the worst matchups for Paladin if the Druid is really, really skilled and knows what the hell they're doing. Because I've dueled Flixer before a number of times. So we're talking about a Druid at this point that is basically a boomkin. Boomkin Druids can absolutely kill Paladins. It's just that they kind of have to stand and deliver, and they have to get a little lucky on their arcane, whatever the hell, stunning the paladin, and then they have to get lucky on crits. And if the paladin has eye for an eye and reckoning, it's going to be a really bad day. But if I was like a deep holy paladin, and I wasn't like some variant of a reckoning paladin, I could see a boomkin actually having a winning matchup against a paladin. Definitely better than 50-50 to be sure. But against a reckoning paladin, especially a heal reckoning paladin, my money's on the paladin. They're probably going to get hacked to pieces. But this is one of the harder matchups for a paladin to actually win, is boomkin versus paladin, like unironically. But it is still noticeably paladin favored. The vast majority of druid versus paladins, and it might be one of those weird situations where boomkin has a decent matchup against paladin, but it struggles to beat other matchups in like a dueling tournament like setting, so that you rarely see that. This happens quite often with priest versus paladin. So almost all the priests in dueling tournaments are some variant of a shadow priest, specifically because unless you're a shadow priest, you don't have enough durability to survive against rogues. Rogues will eat you alive if you're not a shadow priest. However, smite priests do such an ungodly amount of DPS just standing there and casting smite. Like, for example, their smite spell has a 70% spell power ratio behind it, and like a 2-second cast. Whereas my Holy Light has like a 68% spell power ratio behind it, and I need 2.5 seconds to cast it. That a priest using Smite can just stand there and cast Smite into a paladin while I'm trying to cast Holy Lights to heal myself, and I will fucking die. Smite priests have like the highest spell DPS of any class in the entire fucking game. It's absolutely terrifying. The only thing keeping Smite Priest in check is that they die to other classes, probably like a Shaman's Kamehameha. They probably die to a Mage's Kamehameha Burst. They probably die even to like a few other Kamehamehas of note, like a Destro Warlock's Kamehameha. The only thing that keeps that abomination in check is the fact that they just don't have enough durability to survive against some of the burst classes in the game, most notably Rogue. Boomkin Druid might have a very similar effect, where they have this really good matchup against Paladins, in my personal opinion, but they struggle against a number of other matchups on this list, so it just isn't a thing you ever see in dueling tournaments. You end up with the more endurance fighter, soda poppin' variant. If you're a Druid player, one of the best videos for PvP you can possibly watch is Tips Out's deep dive with soda popping on Druid. Some people say Storm X invented it. Some people say, I forget the other Druid's name, is responsible for the soda poppin' variant of Druid. But soda poppin', to my knowledge, is the one that definitely popularized it. But I could be wrong. Maybe it was Storm X that came up with it. Maybe it was some other Druid who's responsible for it. But yeah, that's usually the thing you fight in dueling tournaments. It's more of an endurance combat style Druid. And that thing has a losing matchup against Paladins. It's a very long fight, but neither of these assholes can really kill each other. What ends up putting it in the Paladin's favor is that inevitably, if the fight goes on for long enough, the Paladin will get enough good RNG together that the Druids tend to fall over. But that's only if it's a Reckoning Paladin. I have no effing clue how Paladins that don't have Reckoning beat this stupid thing. Maybe they're entirely reliant on Seal of Command, like popping off a bit more than it should. And the next thing you know, the Druid is in a really bad place and they potentially die. But without Reckoning and Command, I don't know how you're really supposed to beat Druids into the dirt. They just stay in teddy bear form and they fight you until the end of time, and they're just mana regen and fight you in teddy bear form and mana regen. When I duel them as a Reckoning Paladin, we basically almost always hit the duel timer, which is like 10 minutes, and the duel just automatically ends. But if you go for long enough, in theory, RNG will come for the Druid a hell of a lot more than it'll come for the Paladin. So that's the theory behind those Paladins. The reason why they can't beat each other is basically because at any point in time, if the Paladin is running out of mana, he can just judge Wisdom on the Druid and switch to a fast one-handed weapon and get all of his mana back. So at any moment, the Paladin can literally become unkillable to the Druid, unless it's specifically a Boomkin. The Druid doesn't really have any RNG mechanics outside of Boomkin to potentially put the Paladin into the dirt. And if it's a Reckoning Paladin with Seal of Command, then a good fucking luck, right? Eventually, your Druid auto attacks are going to crit like twice in a row, and you're going to give that Paladin one too many Reckoning charges, and those Reckoning charges are going to result in like 2 or 3 Seal of Command procs that also crit, and you're just going to explode. Even in bear form. Yeah, that's the theory at least. Yep. All right, moving on. Warlock versus Paladin. Okay, here's an interesting one. Warlock versus Paladin always comes down to Mithril Insignia Trinket. Okay, without Mithril Insignia Trinkets, Paladins, they can beat Warlocks, but it looks like a completely different animal. They have to go into like a very heavy shadow resistant suit, like 300-ish, 250, 300-ish shadow resistant suit, because it starts shutting down Warlock fears. Warlock fears are also subject to heartbeat duration tick issues, the same way as we saw with the mages and polymorph. So you just need a little bit of shadow resistance gear or shadow resist in general versus a warlock, and the next thing you know, you're breaking out of their fears on the regular quite early. Generally speaking, once you get up around about 180 shadow resistance versus a warlock, they start having a really hard time, even if they are able to keep get fears on you. But all right, so I'll go into horrifying detail as to how to beat a warlock, since I'm probably responsible for making it even possible back in the day. Fun fact, I actually was the one who discovered Mithril Insignia Trinket. When I brought it up to Jakova, even he didn't know it was a thing back in the day. And then when Henhouse came out like 2 weeks after this, and I was one of the first people on the Henhouse PvP private server. And they didn't have Mithril Insignia available in the gear vendors. So I literally talked to Stormex and asked him to put it in the vendors. When I was like, hey, can you put Mithril Insignia into the vendors? He's like, what's that? And when Stormex is saying, what's that? You're on, and Drakova as well, you've discovered something here. So I linked it to him. He's like, holy crap. I'm like, yeah. And so he puts it into the vendors, and the rest is history. Every dueling tournament after that, everyone and their dog has Mithril Insignia Trinket. If you don't know what it does, it's basically a 10-minute cooldown trinket. I could probably show it here really fast. Go over here to Gear Planner. Click this. Go Mithril. It's glimmering Mithril Insignia Trinket, but everyone refers to it as Mithril Insignia Trinket. You have to be a blacksmith in order to get the thing. Says increases armor by 50, all resistances by 10, but more importantly, grants immunity to fear for 30 seconds on a 10-minute cooldown. Only trinket in the game that does anything even remotely like that. Holy crap, does that change the nature of the matchup. Okay, so I'll go into horrifying detail as to how, I wonder if they fixed their bug. It's clearly bugged. Whatever. I'll go into horrifying detail as to how a Paladin is supposed to be a Warlock. And I'll talk about it in terms of a best out of 3 matchup in a dueling tournament, just so we're abundantly clear here. Okay? So you start the first fight as a Paladin, and you use Mithril Insignia. You don't really bother with very much shadow resistance gear whatsoever. You kind of just wear like pure DPS gear, and you basically just use Mithril Insignia's fear immunity to beat the ever-loving shit out of the Warlock. You just go to town on them, right? Since they're an SO Warlock, area of effect damage is also incredibly good. So you like, throw thorium grenades and try to hit both the warlock and the pet and yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. A lot of times you actually want to try to beat them to death with a really fast one-handed weapon and not like a two-hander. The reason for this is because the only option a warlock really has to stop the punishment that is happening to them, since they can't fear you, is to try to Kamehameha Shadow Bolts into the paladin in an effort to get the paladin to need to stop and heal themselves, right? You can try to stun the paladin, theoretically, like, throw a grenade and get some distance, but that's just going to result in the paladin hitting you with a grenade and catching back up to you, like that sort of a thing. Or goblin mortar him and get some distance, but the paladin's just going to goblin mortar you and catch up to you, or tidal charm him or rocket boots, but the paladin can counter with rocket boots, and it's just like, fuck. There's all kinds of, what if, maybe, blah, 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 shenanigans to try to counteract the Mithril Insignia trinket, but it's what's behind the Mithril Insignia trinket that makes the matchup untenable. The Mithril Insignia trinket is just putting the Warlock on the back foot already, okay? So, the whole purpose of the Mithril Insignia trinket is to just beat the shit out of the Warlock as much as you can while you have your fear immunity. If you fail to kill the Warlock, and against a good Warlock, you are going to fail to kill them using Mithril Insignia trinket alone, for whatever reason, right? Be it that they geared so that they're so durable they're just going to survive through all that nonsense, or they're used rocket boots when you didn't have rocket boots, or some blah, 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 right? If they manage to survive against the fear immunity, the backup plan is this. Let me go find it. It's going to be Book of the Dead. Okay, so there are 2 skeleton summoning books in Classic WoW. One of them is Book of the Dead, it has like a 2% chance to drop or something like that off the final boss in Strat Live. The other one is more common, which is the Grim War that drops off of Onyxia. So you can see this one says source is from Onyxia, and it says use this thing, summon a skeleton to protect you, blah, 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 blah. The Book of the Dead, it'll say is Book of the Dead is, Grand Crusader, what's his face, in Strat Live. The way these things work and how this pairs with the, I didn't get done saying that crap. Anyways, you remember what I said when you're beating on them with Mithril Insignia Trinket active? Your best course of action is usually to use a fast one-handed weapon, because the only thing they can do is to try to Kamehameha you with Shadow Bolts. Well, if you're using a fast one-handed weapon, again, like Edward the Odd, with Seal of Righteousness, Seal of Righteousness causes ×2 pushback, and let's just have the Book of the Dead here. Let's go find Edward the Odd really fast here. Yep. So Edward the Odd is a 1.6 speed weapon that has a proc on hit effect that says chance on hit. Next spell cast within 4 seconds is instant. With Seal of Righteousness active, this means that it procs about once every 30 seconds of melee attacking your target, give or take, which means a free instant light heal. The amazing thing about this, when you're beating on a Warlock, whether you're using this or like a Flurry Axe or something else that's really fast and does a lot of damage, is that you're doing ×2. Each of your auto attacks is causing 2 hits worth of spell pushback if you're using Seal of Righteousness. And then even if they do manage to get off enough Shadow Bolts, and some of those Shadow Bolts crit to even make you think about healing yourself, the odds of Edward the Odd proccing and coming through and just giving you a full heal so you can continue to sit on the Warlock and beat the crap out of them are incredibly high. But the real reason you use the one-hander, and usually you'll run up to them, hit them with a two-hander, immediately swap into an Edward the Odd, use a Seal of Righteousness, activate your Mithril Insignia trinket. But the real reason you're doing it is because you can you can switch over to one of these skeleton summoning books. The skeleton summoning book will be on a 30-second cooldown, of course, but your Edward the Odd trinket lasts 30 seconds, and behind that Edward the Odd running out, you also have like a 6-second Hodge stun, and blah, 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 right? And then a bunch of spell pushback when they're trying to get the fear off on you. Anyways, let's say the Warlock survives all that, and they will. They survive the Edward the Odd trinket. They survive being pummeled with Edward the Odd, and now they're finally putting a fucking fear on you, right? Well, right before the fear lands, you activate this skeleton summoning book, and it summons a skeleton that'll do like 100 DPS damage per second to them. Chase them around. It's literally like a mob in Western Plaguelands chasing them around, like a level 60 Western Plaguelands undead skeleton chasing them around. It's got like plus 15% increased movement speed, so you can't really outrun it as a warlock. It's got 5,500 or 5,400-ish hit points. You can put buffs on it as the paladin. You can heal the stupid thing. So you can put freedom on this stupid skeleton summoning pet. You can put Blessing of Sacrifice on it. You can put Blessing of Might on it. You can do all kinds of stupid things. Then it lasts a fucking minute. And behind this skeleton summoning pet is another skeleton summoning pet. So while this pet is out, I can literally switch over to my Book of the Dead, and I can't use it for a solid minute because it will detect that the other skeleton is out, so it'll put it on a minute-long cooldown. But I can summon another skeleton behind that. So while I'm running away feared as the paladin, right, while I'm being feared, and what the Warlock desperately wants to do is to go reset, to go eat and drink because of how much damage that they've done. They don't want to cast spells into me because that's going to help break me out of the fear a lot early, and they're kind of desperate for a reset. Basically how Warlocks kill Paladins is that they try to kill the Paladin until they get out the Paladin's bubble. Then they survive the Paladin's bubble. Then they fear the Paladin, and they go and they reset, and they try to kill them again, and they usually succeed. That's traditionally how they do it. But a combination of Mithril Insignia Trinket and these stupid skeleton book summons not letting the Warlock get off these resets that they need to get off basically causes them to die horrifically against Paladins. Okay? So the first duel in a best out of 3, you use your Mithril Insignia, and you might have to use one skeleton summoning book, okay, in order to stop the reset and then to effectively kill them. Once you come out of the fear as the paladin, you swap into your shadow resistance set, however much they'll let you have in a dueling tournament. Usually they'll put like a cap of like a 200-ish shadow resistance gear. So you'll swap into a shadow resist suit to help break you out of the fears and make it impossible for the warlock to do any damage to actually kill you. And you just go over there and you beat them to fucking death. In the next duel right after that, you're basically down one of these Book of the Dead, and you're down your Mithril Insignia Trinket. You'll fight that duel from start to finish in the heaviest shadow resistance suit that you can possibly is allowed to you in the dueling tournament. And you'll use your one remaining Book of the Dead to prevent any resets if possible. But really, typically, you're using like Bubble and PvP Trinket and maybe one Book of the Dead to chain together enough time on target on the Warlock to actually kill them, right? To prevent resets, blah, 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 blah. But you're breaking out of the fears remarkably quickly, and you're really hard to fear in the first place, that you tend to have a really good chance of winning that duel anyways. But even if you lose that second duel, right, you end up, because you went into it with a shadow resistance suit, the duel lasts so fucking long, holy crap, that your Book of the Dead that you used in the first duel is coming off a cooldown, and your Mithril Insignia Trinket on a, I think it's also on a 10-minute cooldown, or 50-minute cooldown. Let me find it really fast here. Your Glimmering Mithril Insignia Trinket's on a 10-minute cooldown. That one's coming off a cooldown. So which means that even if you somehow manage to lose the second in a best out of 3, the third best out of 3, the Warlock has to deal with another Glimmering Mithril Insignia and a Glimmering Mithril Insignia, and by all rights, another Book of the Dead that's going to be coming off cooldown, or is already off cooldown very shortly. On top of that, it's not like the Warlock isn't missing some of their major cooldowns as well, right? Like their extra... fuck, what is it called? Fell, I think it's called Fell Dom, but whatever. It's a thing that lets them summon another pet, like with a 2-second summon rather than like a 10-second summon. I can go look at it really fast. Let's see here. Warlock. Okay. Let's go to Warlock, I guess. No, Warlock. We'll go to Talents. It's going to be in Demonology. It's going to be all the way down near the bottom. Master Demonologist? No. Improve Spellstone? No. Demonic Sacrifice? Is that it? No. Improve Subjugate Demon? No. It's like an activatable. I remember this. Master Summoner. Yeah, reduces... Let's get some points in this thing. Okay. Master Summoner. Reduces the cast time of your Imp, Voidwalker, Succubus, blah, 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 blah. Summoning spells by 4 seconds and the mana cost by 40%. Feldom. Your next Imp, Void... Okay, here we go. Your next Imp, Voidwalker, Succubus, Incubus, or Fel Hunter Summon spell has its casting time reduced by 5.5 seconds and its mana cost reduced by 50%. So, if I have 2 skill points in this thing, that means I'll be able to get it out in 0.5 seconds. Normally it's a 10-second cast. But if I'm reducing it by 4 seconds and then this stupid... This thing's on a 15-minute cooldown, right? So he's kind of suffering already. So I honestly don't know how he survived the second duel, but if he does, congrats to him, I guess. So I guess they only put 1 point in here because 2 seconds and 7.5 seconds would make it a 1.5 second cast. Yeah, that's fine. So I guess that's how they would save like a talent point or something like that. But anyways, that's the horrifying detail of why Paladins actually end up beating the crap out of Warlocks. It's a combination of Mithril Insignia and then the Skeleton Book summons not allowing them to have a reset on the Paladin. And just a combination of that just ends up causing the Paladin to basically grind them into pulp. And some of the other Warlock variants, like we've talked about already, have a better matchup against Paladin. Like Affliction Warlock has a terrible matchup, but Demonology, blah blah, Destro Warlock actually has a better matchup against most Paladins than SL Warlock. The trick there for the Paladin is to trade Bubble. You literally let the when the Succubus seduces you, you literally wait for the Warlock to waste his mana on the burst, and then you bubble it when it's in midair. So it hasn't hit you yet, but you just say fuck it, and you basically bubble that shit off. There's other things you can do, like you can wear fire resist gear and make the matchup completely trivial if it's a Destro Warlock. But the easiest thing to do is just bubble the burst when it's in the air and just make it your business to kill the Succubus with your bubble. Because if you have Mithril Insignia Trinket, they can't fear you to resummon the Succubus. And without Succubus, they kind of just get their asses handed to them, which is kind of like that. But in theory, they have a better matchup against Paladin, but then they suck against a bunch of other things on this list, so you just never see them in dueling tournaments. Anyways, that's the short version of how Paladins end up beating Warlocks. It's a combination of Shadow Resistance gear, Mithril Insignia, and Skeleton Book summons. It basically just checkmates them quite badly. All right, Paladin versus Mage. We talked about this a little bit already. There's a lot to say on this. Let me take a drink of water here. All right. Okay. So, at the highest levels of play between Paladin versus Mage, the TLDR is that the mages need 2 ice blocks or they fucking die. Okay? And there's kind of no way around it. They need 2 ice blocks or they can't get away with 1 ice block is what I'm trying to say. And this basically means that they have to be a frost mage, because only frost mages have access to like 2 ice blocks. I could be wrong about that. There might be some weird I think there is some Palm Pyro version that has access to 2 ice blocks. But the TLDR when it comes to the various mages in dueling is that what forces them to play Frost more than anything is there's a number of matchups, I think, that they run into where they need to have 2 ice blocks or they fucking die. Paladin ends up being one of those. And to give you a very simple explanation of what this looks like, imagine a mage tries to open up on a paladin. The paladin does what he's supposed to do, which is obviously he starts in a sheep. He gets out of the sheep by taking a frostbolt to the face. That frostbolt may or may not crit. Behind this frostbolt, the mage is already on the way of casting another frostbolt, right? The correct course of action for the paladin is, it depends on how close the mage is. If the mage is too close to the paladin, he just ends up freedoming himself and running at the mage, because he'll get within Hodge range before the mage can get off that that second frostbolt. And even if he does get off the second frostbolt, it's incredibly dangerous for him to be that close to a paladin, especially if he's got Cone of Cold on the mind. He has to blink away, and it just gets a little sus from there. So if he's close enough, you run at him. But if he's far enough away, the correct course of action is to actually freedom yourself as a paladin, run back a little bit, and then to start healing yourself. Because the healing forces the mage to have to use counterspell, because they can't out-heal. Mages cannot they cannot DPS down a paladin. If a paladin's spamming Holy Lights and the mage is doing nothing but DPSing them, they cannot DPS the paladin down without counterspell. So if I just put a freedom up and then I start healing myself, if the mage wants to continue the burst, they have to counterspell me. They cannot let that holy light go through. Even if it's a flash of light that I'm starting off to heal myself with, they can't really let that go through. So usually what will happen is they will complete their Frostbolt spellcast and then they'll immediately counterspell the paladin. But the paladin has already freedomed himself. So then from here, the paladin basically runs it away in a straight line. Just runs away in a straight line from the mage. The mage can blink forward and can't really get off another Frostbolt because it goes back to that whole, are they too close or are they too far away thing. If I try the running tactic when they were too close to me and I should have ran at them and hodged on them instead, they can 100% blink forward and get a Frostbolt into me. But generally speaking, what they have to do is they have to kind of like run. They blink forward and they chase the paladin, and they just put like 2 fire blasts into the paladin. And then when the paladin stops and starts channeling a holy light, they can usually, if they're close enough, they can stop. Well, they don't want to be too close because the Hodge stun, right? But they can potentially get in a Frostbolt into them on time. But usually not. It's really hard to explain. But generally speaking, and if you're playing correctly as a paladin, all you have to survive is 2 Frostbolt hits and 2 Fire Blast hits, and just learn how to play with freedom and catching counterspell and running away in a straight line. Right. So that's how the opener works between these two. But then things get a little interesting from there. Okay, because I want to open talking about this matchup by uttering the phrase, the mage tries to kill the paladin, he fails to kill the paladin, and then he finds himself in a world where he needs to sheep the paladin and eat and drink. Okay? I just got done explaining how we get there. like how it looks like how we get there. Worst case scenario, the paladin has to use bubble to get into this situation. Generally speaking, it costs a mage about 50% of their mana bar in order to attempt to kill a paladin. The reason for this is because they have to use a lot of blinks, they have to use a lot of fire blasts, they might even need to use a Cone of Cold here or there. The Frostbolts are incredibly cheap mana-wise, but everything else is really expensive. The Mage's Blink is like 500 mana. The Fire Blasts, I do believe, are also close to like 500 mana. Basically, the only thing cheap on a Mage is their Frostbolt. And they can't just, stand still and cast Frostbolts and expect to kill a Paladin. So they have to use a lot of mana. What this means is, at the highest levels of play, mages need to use 50% of their mana bar in order to even be able to threaten to get out a bubble on a paladin. So if I'm fighting like a mage that only has like a 30% mana bar and I'm like full life as a paladin, I know for a fucking fact that they cannot generate enough. They don't have enough mana to fucking kill me. Like literally, they don't have enough mana to kill me. I'm perfectly fine running at them full zug zug. It's actually kind of funny that way. Now, if they still have mana potion and mana crystal and possibly even what is it? Major recombobulator ray available for mana. This is a terrible idea. But as a paladin player, I'm aware that I'm only scared of a mage if they have about 50% of a mana bar to play with. The other side of that coin is that mages need to hold in reserve about 30% of their mana bar in reserve to be able to survive a paladin's attentions to try to kill them. Okay. So now we're going to talk about what that looks like. So this is where the mages need their 2 ice blocks. So let's put ourselves in this situation. Let's say a mage has spent 50% of his mana bar to try to kill me, and I've survived all that nonsense, and I'm currently healing myself, right? And so the mage is like, okay, I'm going to go for a sheep on this paladin. Let's say that rather than him going for a sheep, I do something as simple as throw a grenade at him. I probably wouldn't throw a grenade though, but let's just say I throw a grenade, right? I'm like, well, he's trying to cast a sheep. I hit him with a grenade. Okay, cool. The mage has to blink away from me or die. Typically, what this looks like is the fight has gone on long enough. There's been multiple, traditionally, there's been multiple kill attempts of the paladin. The paladin may or may not have bubble left. What we do know for a fact is that this paladin has been crit so many times. By multiple kill attempts, I mean the mage tries to kill the paladin tries to live, the paladin gets sheep, the mage gets his mana bar, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. What we do know is that the paladin has taken so many crits that he has a full wreck bomb now. Because the paladin has a full wreck bomb, he can start throwing grenades and going offensive potentially against the mage. This is the point where the mage needs to hold 30% of their mana in reserve or fucking die. And I'm going to explain why. So, if the paladin has a full wreck bomb, he just grenades the mage. The mage either has to blink away or die. The mage spends 500 fucking mana to blink away. Jesus Christ. But then the paladin can easily pull into his bag of trinkets and Goblin Mortar the mage, or Gnomish Netomatic the mage, or Tidal Charm the mage, take your pick. The mages, since their blink is on cooldown, they're in a situation where they have to ice block or die, because again, Reckoning Paladin running at them, right? Okay, so let's say it's something as ambiguous as I grenade the mage, he blinks away, then I Goblin Mortar stun him. Yeah, the stun's only 1.5 seconds, but the blink is only 20 yards, and the paladin's moving quite fast, and Hodge stun is still available. Hodge stun's going to be only going to be a 1.5 second duration due to DR, but the paladin only has to get within 13 yards due to the leeway mechanic to use that. Moral of the story is we're in an ice block situation or die. Okay. So first ice block is used, but it was traded for one of the paladin's trinkets. So, so far so good. The mage has to sit the entirety of that ice block, all 10 seconds of it, in order for blink to come off a cooldown so that he can immediately, blink away again and try to go for the sheep. But the paladin can still reach into his bag of trinkets and whatnot. He can't really... He can Tidal Charm interrupt kind of a thing, right? But it's so horribly DR'd that the mage is going to come out of it almost instantly and just keep running, right? So at this point, you're kind of restricted to Gnomish Netomatic anyway. Only Gnomish Netomatic has a 20% chance to fail you. I've done the math. I've tested it and done the math. So in theory, he can Gnomish Netomatic the mage. Actually, that's not true because the mage can still get off sheep. Interesting. So let's say worst case scenario, right? The mage gets a sheep off on the paladin, but the paladin uses PvP trinket to pop right out of the sheep instantaneously, and is still running at the mage. The mage has to try to run away to get another blink again in order to get a sheep off on this stupid paladin. There may or may not be a title charm here. There may or may not be a gnomish nomadic. There may or may not be a nifty stopwatch. There may or may not be rocket boots. You see where we're going with this. Moral of the story here is that if he's used his... well, I guess there wouldn't be a title charm because we're out of 2 trinkets. But the paladin can definitely reach... yeah, and there wouldn't be a nifty stopwatch because the paladin is out of trinkets. Interesting. So I guess the only bag left or it would have to be rocket boots at this point. How interesting. But the moral of the story here is the paladin's probably going to force out, going to be able to generate enough bag of tricks nonsense to be able to force out another ice block. But there's no fucking way that he can avoid being sheeped on, like, after this, if that makes sense. Even if he still has bubble... the mage is going to blink away, put him in a sheep. He'll bubble out of it. The mage will just run away in a straight line. Wait till blink is up, blink away even further, wait till bubble is down, and then sheep him. The bag of tricks basically runs out for the paladin after you get all the ice blocks out of the mage. That's just how it looks at the highest levels of play. And because the paladin's out of tricks and now he's sheepable again, we now enter the wonderful wide world of the paladin gets sheeped, blah, 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 blah. There's other things to talk about here where it's like, what if the mage is also playing these silly games right back at the paladin? What if he's using rocket boots as well? What if he's using nifty stopwatch? What if he's using title charm and gnomish nomadic and all that stuff? And these things also wear on the paladin's bag of tricks. What ends up happening in those situations is the paladin will, grenade the mage, goblin mortar the mage, get out like one ice block of the mage, and then get sheeped. And the reset will happen. And then like a minute later, he'll do the same thing with title charm or nifty stopwatch or some crap like that. It always ends at the highest level of dueling with the mage has no ice blocks, but the paladin just cannot put enough bag of tricks together to finish off the mage. Okay? You follow me on this? That just ends up being what happens. Along comes, however, the fact that we're breaking out of sheeps kind of on the regular. What happens when the paladin can add to his bag of tricks that he can swap into arcane resistance gear slowly or quickly or whenever the hell he wants to, and shut down the whole you get to eat and drink and get your mana bar back part of the mage's meta, right? At any point in time, I can throw a grenade at, what ends up happening basically is that the mage just runs out of mana, can never get enough mana back to actually threaten the paladin again, which is the paladin's window to put on more and more arcane resistance gear, which means that the mage really is never going to get his mana bar back to be able to threaten the paladin ever again. And the mage just kind of eventually falls over and dies. They run out of mana and they fucking die because the sheeps they're just not lasting is the TLDR of basically what ends up happening. Drakova has some videos on how to duel sheeps. I have some videos, on how to duel mages. I have some videos on how to duel mages. There's 2 different routes you can go traditionally on how to duel mages. Drakova likes to go down the rabbit hole of having 300 frost resistance and 200 fire resistance suit with Might of Minithil. And the whole purpose of that suit is just to survive long enough until you have a full wreck bomb, and then you can switch into a more DPS threatening suit versus the mage, right? An actual kill suit versus the mage to try to actually kill them. In one of my videos, I talk about how you can use 200 fire resistance. So you don't even bother with the frost resistance. You just use 200 fire resist to achieve something very similar. Without the fire resistance shuts down the 2 fire blasts that are needed for the frost mage's burst to try to kill you. That ends up being enough of a hindrance to them that a Holy Reckoning Paladin specifically can put Wreck Bomb after Wreck Bomb after Wreck Bomb into the mage, and it's like full Wreck Bomb after full Wreck Bomb into them. Yes, eventually one of those, each Wreck Bomb only has like a 10% chance to kill the mage, but if you're putting Wreck Bomb after Wreck Bomb after Wreck Bomb into them because the mage just can't really kill you very well, that kind of works a little bit. But those two metas in conjunction with Arcane Resistance meta is going to make the match, or does, in my experience, make the matchup basically untenable for mages. Mages are they're in a losing matchup against paladins now. If the paladins are following either the Drakova method of heavy resistances and reckoning, or they're following, that's usually a reckoning build that'll go the heavy resistances route. And then the 200 fire resistance route, so we're talking Hand of Rag, 5-piece tier 2, blah, 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 blah. That route is usually reserved for like a Holy Reckoning Paladin or Heal Reckoning, Paladins that have healing in combat and Reckoning. But yeah, so Arcane Resist is it just changes the matchup, like, horrifically. And I don't think there's anything they can do to really get out of it. Worst case scenario you do as a Paladin is you start off not wearing Arcane Resistance gear because it makes you incredibly weak. Incredibly weak. It makes you easy to kill in the bursts, right? And then after the mage has tried to kill you a couple of times and they're low on mana, they have like 40%-ish mana or something like that, you will use PvP Trinket to get out of a sheep early, assuming it's a really good mage and he's not letting heartbeat duration happen. You use PvP Trinket to get out of the sheep early. You have a macro to swap over to the Arcane Resistance gear like you're seeing on screen right now. Not a lot of Arcane Resist, but just enough that you're going to start getting more heartbeat durations. And then as the mage's mana bar starts wearing lower and lower over the course of the fight, you can switch into more and more Arcane Resist, and eventually you're just going to fucking win. Because if you start the duel in like heavy Arcane Resistance gear, your HP is going to be so low the mage can easily kill you in a burst. But if you switch into it at some point in the fight when the mage is half mana or lower, you probably have he's going to have one fucking burst to try to kill you. And if you still have bubble, good fucking luck, my good sir. And and then after that, they're just never getting their mana bar back again, and they're fucking cooked. All right, cool. So let's move on to the next class. Priest versus Paladin. This one is incredibly easy. You're almost always fighting a Shadow Priest. If you're fighting a Smite Priest, it's all about kill them before they kill you, and good luck, you're probably going to lose. I'm not even fucking joking. It's the stuff of nightmares if you've never fought one before. But they tend to have bad PvP matchups against the other classes, so you never see them. It's always Shadow Priest, always Shadow Priest, always Shadow Priest. The moral of the story with Paladin versus Shadow Priest is that if you're a Paladin who's able to find either his Shadow Resistance gear or his Seal of Wisdom and are smart enough to realize that if you're beating on the Priest with a two-handed weapon and Seal of Wisdom, and your Seal of Wisdom costs 200 mana, and when you hit somebody with it, every 4 seconds of swing timer, it has a 100% chance to proc. Okay? So if you're swinging a 3.8 speed weapon at a priest, and right before you swing your weapon, you activate Seal of Wisdom and then hit them, you have like a 95 or higher percent chance to gain back like, I want to say like 120 mana or something stupid like that, right? So you gain back almost all the mana of that seal. And then if the priest allows you to continue beating on them with Seal of Wisdom up, they literally cannot kill you. It's secretly a mana war between the two of them. So the priest has to use their Dispel to remove the Seal of Wisdom from you. The problem is that the priests cannot downrank their Dispel, and their Dispel costs them 254 or 58 mana, or something like that. I can't remember. So, the moral of the story is that if you as a paladin can somehow, usually it's like a tier 1 suit that you'll wear against the priest. I'm not a big fan of this, but some people like doing this. Usually in dueling tournaments, you'll see the paladins, they'll wear like 180 or 200-ish shadow resist suit against a priest, and then they'll basically beat the crap out of them. And worst case scenario, they'll use Seal of Wisdom just to beat them to death. The problem the priest ends up having is that they can't kill the paladin, and then they're eventually going to run out of mana and die, and they can't the paladin, and it just ends up being a losing matchup for them. I've found that I'm a big fan of using even less shadow resistance, like 100 shadow resist against a priest, going very heavy on pressure and damage versus shadow priests, and just the sheer fact that I can find and know how to use Seal of Wisdom if I early on in the matchup basically makes the matchup untenable for them. You start throwing in the fact that you have you can use Bubble to get out of one of their fears. You can use PvP Trinket to get out of one of their fears. Their fears are like at a 25-second cooldown. And you can also use Mithril Insignia to make yourself immune to their fears for 30 seconds. And the whole purpose of wearing the Shadow Resistant suit is not so much to keep you... It helps keep you alive versus them, but really what it's there is to fish for natural occurring fear resists. So if I have 180 shadow resist, there's a really good chance that I'll resist one of their fears. And the moment I resist one of their fears, the next thing I know, I can back that up with PvP Trinket against their next fear, Bubble against their next fear, and then Mithril Insignia after that. In between all of that, there's going to be some natural fear resists that occur. So you can basically just get to sit on top of the priest for precisely 1 million fucking years while beating them to death, and there's kind of nothing they can do about it. The priests desperately need to, fear the paladin, go eat and drink, fear the paladin, go eat and drink. If they can do that, they can kind of win the matchup, but not really. But you start putting together the natural resistances and all the options to get out of the fears, and the fact that they can hit you with a seal that costs them 80 mana effectively, because 95% chance to proc, and you have to dispel it as a priest, or you're just going to lose a mana war and die. It puts them in an untenable situation. The combination of all of that, they just end up losing. They have a really bad matchup against paladins because of that. All right, warrior. Warrior is actually quite fascinating, believe it or not, because if you're playing a paladin that doesn't have healing in combat, like you're playing a paladin. So if we go back over here and we look at this paladin here, the Wowhead is bugged right now. So if I go back to Paladin, specifically, okay, let's see here. We need tools, we need gear planner, we need Paladin, we need Dwarf. Come on, go there. You reset the gear? Why, man? Why do this to me? No! Maybe I have to log into Classic World of Warcraft here and showcase some stuff. Whatever, I'll do the talent build really fast. Ugh. Let's at least throw the talents in here. We got 4 points into this. This is Heal Reckoning. We'll just showcase Heal Reckoning really quick here. I think I put 4 points over there. Get Kings. Eventually you want it versus Rogues. One thing I forgot to mention about Rogues is that Thunder Fury Rogue can actually beat the holy living crap out of Edward the Odd Sword and Board Paladin. If you're not a Reckoning Paladin, you cannot beat a Rogue that has Thunder Fury. Like, straight up. You just can't do it. The reason for this is because Thunder Fury, every Thunder Fury procs like a machine gun, and it's constantly putting 2 dispellable things on you, like a slow and like some other crap. And so rogues, like wound poison and shit, are allowed to stack up on you as a paladin. And so you just end up dying from all the... it's like fighting a TBC rogue if you're trying to sword and board them to death. So Thunder Fury rogues are a completely different animal. When you're trying to duel them, it's basically have Reckoning or go home. And if they're smart enough to, use their free action potions and stuff, it can be a really hard matchup. But Edward the Odd will still cause you to live long enough, typically, that you'll just end up winning. Because it's like, I don't know. You still have bubble and stuff, so they still end up kind of dying. It's hard to explain. All right, so heal Reckoning, 2 here, 3 here, 1 here, 4 here, and then the remaining 2 go into here. Heal Reckoning is probably the most deadly paladin in the entire game, and it's one of the reasons why paladins are one of the best. This is probably the best dueling class in the entire game, in my opinion, right now. So how this build works is you have 4 points in spiritual focus, giving you 50% spell pushback. And then if you ever need to heal yourself, you can go into your improved concentration aura. So you have 2 points into this thing. This gives you 45% spell pushback when you're in the concentration aura. We add those together. I think it was 56 plus 45. You end up having 101 spell pushback immunity. So this paladin can swap using improved concentration aura. It also has the added benefit of, 10% chance to ignore interrupts and silence effects. But this is a paladin that has Reckoning, 5 out of 5, Eye for an Eye, 2 out of 2, Seal of Command that it can seal twist into, has really good critical strike chance because it has 4 points in Conviction. On top of the fact that it's basically a Reckoning Paladin that can heal itself in combat. And we can't really talk about Warrior without talking about that. Okay, so the TLDR about Warrior versus Paladin is that Paladins that cannot heal in combat, that cannot stand still and heal themselves over and over and over again and ignore, spell pushback, the Paladins that cannot do this have a losing matchup against Prot Warriors, specifically against mitigation Prot Warriors who use a Diamond Flask. Because Diamond Flask for a Warrior basically means that the Warrior has 60 seconds where they can attack the Paladin, and the Paladin literally cannot do anything to kill the Warrior. They just have to suffer 60 fucking seconds of the Warrior beating the shit out of them. And if they don't have the ability to be like, well, I'm just going to stand still with a shield and I'm not even going to bother to hit them because I don't want to give them rage, and just heal through these 60 seconds of Diamond Flask healing nonsense. If the Paladin can't do that, they fucking die. Okay? Are we clear on that? So, Control Ret has a losing matchup against Prot Warriors. Diamond Flasking Prot Warriors for this reason. The reason why I keep bringing up the Prot Warrior aspect of the Warrior is because if it's a Reckoning Paladin, which is a Paladin that has Eye for an Eye and Reckoning, but doesn't have healing in combat, that Paladin, if it's not a Prot Warrior, I don't know, man. Now, Diamond Flask is really powerful. You probably can't even do that. Anyways, the Prot Warrior shuts down Seal of Command. Seal of Command, when the Warrior starts getting close to 20%, 25%, mitigation, dodge, somewhere between dodge, parry, and miss, mitigation gear going, Seal of Command starts being a really bad seal to use, and that forces these Paladins who aren't designed to use Seal of Righteousness, they're designed to use Seal of Command, to start using Seal of Righteousness, and that just makes it even worse. It just makes it awful. So the reason why I bring that up is because in a best of 3 context, in the first matchup, the Paladin might be able to chain together enough nonsense to survive the Diamond Flask. But if it's a Prot Warrior, he's still going to lose anyways, more than likely. But if it wasn't a Prot Warrior, he might be able to survive the Diamond Flask and win. So I'm talking about things like Gnomish Netomatic, might be able to buy them the distance and the time that they need. Bubbles are really good at buying time. Rocket Boots, Nifty Stopwatch is really good at buying time. There's a bunch of things that are really good at buying time for the Warrior, for the Paladin to time out Diamond Flask. But even if when Diamond Flask ends, he's stuck fighting a fucking Prot Warrior, he's boned. Okay? Usually completely boned. And then in a best out of 3 circumstance, if they somehow find a way to win the first duel against the Warrior, They're going to be missing a lot of things that they need to beat a prot warrior in the second best out of 3. And then they're definitely missing things like it's not going to go well. It's just bad. Okay, they just have a losing matchup. I'll just leave it at that. However, the paladins that do have the ability to heal in combat, so we're talking about Holy a Shock Eye, that's a paladin that has Holy Shock and Eye for an Eye. We're talking about a classic a Holy Shock Paladin. We're talking Holy Reckoning, and as I just showcased, Heal Reckoning. If we're talking about a paladin that can just stand still with a shield in extremely heavy armor and just heal themselves while the warrior beats on them to the best of their ability, and basically the paladin can rage starve the warrior to death. And when it looks really weird, but it costs the warrior a considerable amount of rage to kick the heals on a paladin. I think it costs them like 10 rage to kick a heal. They can't kick all the heals. They can only kick about half the heals that the warrior is able to do. They can try to chain together grenades and tidal charms and stuff. But when they're wearing a shield, it's just not going to happen. Like I don't know what to tell you. And they still have bubble and bop behind it. It's like good fucking luck. Wearing the heavy armor and having 4 to 5 points in Eye for an Eye, like I just showed you, right? This build takes 4 to 5 points in toughness specifically to deal with warriors and rogues. But when you're wearing a shield and you're in heavy armor and your battle plan is just not even to hit the warrior so he doesn't get rage from it, but just to stand still and heal yourself, I want to say regularly, which is probably true. You can regularly out-heal the attentions of the warrior and basically win. There's other weird elements to this. So it costs the warrior, I want to say, like 5 rage to hamstring you in PvP gear, and it costs them 10 rage in order to kick a heal. And it also costs them like 30 rage to do a mortal strike, right? Well, if you've ever seen what happens when a paladin just stands still in heavy armor and heals and does nothing but heal, the warrior they literally do not have enough rage to keep mortal strike on you, and they definitely do not have enough rage to keep mortal strike on the paladin and kick the paladin at the same time. So they're forced to make like really tough decisions, and it becomes very easy for the paladin to like sneak in heals when the warrior doesn't have mortal strike on them. The paladin is also, trying to hodge stun them on the regular. They're going to throw out multiple hodge stuns that may or may not land. Blah, 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 blah. Moral of the story is, they still have Gnomish Denomatic and all that crap, right? The moral of the story is that if you're a paladin that has that can generate 100% spell pushback immunity and stand still in heavy armor and just heal themselves, warriors have an incredibly hard time beating that paladin, especially if the paladin knows how to gear correctly against the warrior. Super, super hard time. Super, super hard time. It gets even harder if we're talking about Burrower's Shell Trinket, if we're talking about Arathi Basin bubble trinket. It reduces physical damage, but yada yada yada. And we're talking like Arena Grandmaster's trinket. The reason for this is because warriors only generate rage off their auto attack. And if you have like a bubble shield up and they're trying to auto attack into that, they won't generate any rage. So if the warrior, like picture this situation, right? The warrior doesn't have enough rage to has 0 rage, but has used whatever rage he has to put a mortal strike on me, right? I can literally just pop an Arena Grandmaster trinket and just stand still and twiddle my thumbs until the mortal strike wears off, and then start healing myself to full, because that warrior is not going to get through that. He has to literally auto attack his way through that Arena Grandmaster's trinket. Which is like 1300 HP, a bubble shield, like with no rage whatsoever. Good fucking luck. He's not going to generate enough rage to really kick me. He might, due to like maybe he has anger management, so it's giving him like 1 rage a second. He might be able to generate enough rage to get a kick in, but guaranteed the mortal strike is going to fall off, and guaranteed I'm going to have more than enough time to heal myself back to full without a Mortal Strike, which is incredibly mana efficient. Not to mention, it's bought me a bunch of time, blah, 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 blah. You can do the same thing with Burrower, Shell Trinket, and yada, yada, yada. So if you know what you're doing, you can trivialize this matchup pretty easily. But they do have winning matchups against Ret Reckoning. No, I've had Control Ret and Deep Ret Paladins because of that reason. Because those classes can't really stand still and heal themselves very well. They can heal themselves kind of using like the bubble trinkets, right? Because while the Arena Grandmaster's bubble is up, he won't suffer any spell pushback from being hit. They can try to weave their 2.5 second Holy Light spell casts in between the warrior's 3.8 weapon attack speed. But a good warrior like saves their kicks for that. There's some back and forth. There's some, you got to be good as a warrior. You can't just, be stupid about the matchup. But they do have a winning matchup against the Paladin, against Ret Reckoning and Control Ret. Specifically. Against Classic Ret, they have a losing matchup because Classic Ret has Consecration. In order to get Consecration, they had to go through, a Spiritual Focus, which means they have 70% spell pushback immunity. They have healing in combat, basically. All right, spell pushback immunity? Yeah, whatever. All right, last one, Hunter. A surprisingly easy matchup for Paladin. It really depends on if you have Wrecking or not, and if you have healing in combat or not. But you chain together enough stuff like, rocket boots, grenades, goblin mortars, gnomish detomatics, bubble, PvP trinket, yada, 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 yada. And the rarely used but also incredible, this hunter has scatter-shotted me. He's about to place down a trap, and he has scatter-shotted me. He has feigned death to get out of combat. He's about to place down a trap while I'm wandering around in this scatter shot. I just bop myself because Blessing of Protection will remove anything physical, right? So you can use it to remove warrior fears. You can use it to remove any kind of physical debuff on you. Scatter shot is a physical incapacitate / stun type deal. You can use it to remove saps and yada yada yada. When you see them put the trap down, immediately or right as they're about to, bop yourself and just run away or even backpedal away from the trap. I really need to test which is better. Is it better for me to strafe away from the trap, which will probably give it +3 yard leeway on activation, or is it better for me to backpedal away from the trap, which will give me -2 yards on its activation as opposed to giving it +2 yards in its activation? Regardless, it's actually pretty easy for you to use Bop to put the hunters in a really bad position tactically. And if you know how to run around the trap, if you know how to use it well, what'll happen is the hunter will scatter shot you from 30 yards away, literally run up to you in order to trap you, and before they even they put the trap down, they'll feign death and put the trap. It's basically they have a macro. Just bop yourself and get away from the trap. Then you basically play Ring Around the Rosie of the trap while while hitting them in melee from time to time and casting judgments into them. So yeah, between your bag of tricks and your ability to heal in combat, and assuming you have the ability to heal in combat, you usually can just wear them down. How do I put this? There are some rules to dueling a hunter. I will start at the beginning. If the hunter has a lot of mana, you need to wear a shield in order to fight them. Period, end of story. Otherwise, they will actually chain together enough damage and have enough mana efficiency to force out bubbles, to force out bops when you don't want to force out bops, to force out bubbles when you don't want them to force out bubbles, and they can actually legitimately kill you. They're a legitimate threat. They have a legitimate chance of killing you when they have full mana. They also have a burst that you really don't want to underestimate. So for example, a hunter burst can literally take out 70% of your life as a paladin, and that's if you're wearing a fucking shield. I don't even want to know what it looks like if I'm not wearing a shield. I think I just have to bubble or fucking die. Which again, forces out that bubble when I really don't want them to, right? So underestimating, when they have mana, their threat level is incredibly high, and you need to respect it, and you need to wear a shield. But if you basically you start the fight wearing a shield, and you wear on the hunter's mana bar, he's going to be doing rank 1 Viper Stings. You're going to be cleansing it off. It's about an even mana trade. I think it's 100 mana for a rank 1 Viper Sting, and it's like 120 mana for you to cleanse it off. So it's a pretty even trade. You usually want to wear like a Malistar's Defender or some trinkets and stuff that have like good MP5. You want to wear on the hunter's mana bar so the threat from them goes away. And once the hunter is living off of these resets, trying to get their mana back, then you can swap into a two-handed weapon, especially if you're a Reckoning Paladin, and start trying to chain together enough time on target with the hunter to be able to kill them. That's when you start digging into your toolkit of like, Tidal Charm, grenades, Gnomish Net-O-Matic, rocket boots, what is it? Nifty stopwatch. What are some other things? I think that's about it. Some people try to use Frost Reflector, using Bop to get out of the scatter shot, and Frost Reflector and just running over the fucking trap is really good because the Frost Trap will activate and won't do anything, and now you're just physically on top of the hunter when he may or may not want you to be on top of them for an extended period of time. Chaining together enough stuff to actually kill them is where you go, right? But if we're having this conversation, right, typically we're dealing with a paladin that either has Repent to work with, has Reckoning to work with, or has Holy Shock to work with. And these guys using these can usually chain together enough death on the hunter that they will eventually kill them. But the critical part to the matchup is you got to fight them with a shield when they're high mana, and you got to be in a build that it has like a thick mana bar and has some MP5 behind it, or there is a chance the hunter can actually chain together enough death to actually kill your paladin. But anyways, if all you have is Holy Shock, you basically pin them up against the edge of the dueling arena. You don't even try to hit them in melee. You just pin them up against the edge of the dueling arena, and you start blasting them with Holy Shocks and Judgments and Holy Shocks and Judgments until they decide they need to scattershot you and go over and try to sheep you, or try to put you in an ice cube and shit. And that's when you can chain together all this nonsense to get out of it. You can use your Bop to help you get out of it. You can use PvP Trinket. You can use Bubble when it comes off cooldown, because the duel may last long enough that you're back to a bubble again, blah, 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 blah. Eventually you'll just, Holy Shock, Judge, Holy Shock, Judge, Holy Shock, Judge, and hit them here and there when they can't trap you, and eventually you'll just fucking kill them. With Reckoning Paladins, you just get them low mana, able to switch over into the two-hander. They're trying to trap you, live hand to mouth, mana regeneration wise. Eventually you're going to put half a Rec Bomb into them enough times that eventually you'll kill them. The only paladins that have a problem killing them are like Reckoning, but even Reckoning can also has their own ways of dealing with them. Reckoning, I think Reckoning even fights them sword and board, and it just gives up on it hodge stuns them and heals to full, or it Arita Grandmasters and heals to full, or it just says fuck it and bops and heals to full, or bubbles and heals to full, and eventually they get like a Rec Bomb that can has like a 70% chance of one-shotting the hunter, and they just kind of go from there. And so the hunter, as a general rule, just has a losing matchup against a paladin if they know what the hell they're doing. Where the hunters beat paladins is the paladins refuse to wear a shield against the hunter at the start of the matchup. If the paladin refuses to wear a shield against the hunter at the start of the matchup, they very quickly have a losing matchup against the hunter, unless you're like one of the best paladins in the world, such as like me or Drakova. But our backup plan to, oh shit, this hunter knows what the fuck he's doing, I need to get into a shield, I need to heal myself, is, surprise, surprise, Edward the motherfucking Odd. Because why? Because we usually are a Reckoning Paladin, and a combination of Edward the Odd and Sword and Board are going to kind of get us through our mistake of opening up on this hunter with, boop, 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 without using a shield. Other good weapons are like Mug of Hurt. Mug of Hurt will slow the hunter considerably. Really helps you out, but we've just been kind of finding we don't need it. We chain together enough stuff and we beat them to death. That's one thing I forgot to mention about Paladin versus Druid. Mug of Hurt is a 10-second slow from a relatively fast one-handed weapon, 1.5 weapon speed. It's the only slow in the game that a Druid cannot shapeshift out of. It doesn't really come into play during duels, however, because the dueling arena is so small that just slowing them with Mug of Hurt isn't really worth it. You end up if they want to waste their mana and shapeshift into travel form and run around the dueling arena, we're perfectly happy with that. So it doesn't really come to play, but it does come to play in like open world fights. Hunters are an absolute nightmare in open world PvP for just about any class to deal with. But they still, it's literally a draw. Hunter versus Paladin in open world PvP is a fucking draw. And the reason why it's a draw is because all the Paladin has to do to not be killed by the Hunter is find the nearest mob that they can beat on to regenerate their mana using Seal of Wisdom. And congratulations, the matchup is a draw. Okay, you follow me on this? The only time this doesn't happen is when the Paladin is fighting a Hunter in some area of the world where they can't somehow find a mob to beat on and regenerate their mana because the mobs in the area die too quickly. But if you've ever seen what a Sword and Board Paladin, what it takes for a Hunter to put down a Sword and Board Paladin in open world PvP, you'll know that the Paladin can literally run away and or chase the Hunter for like a zone and a half. Like literally from one end of like one end of Winter Spring to the other, or one end of Fellwood to the other, before the Paladin finally runs out of mana and dies. So even if you're in a place where you can't beat on mobs to actually regenerate enough mana to be able to not die to the Hunter, you can usually get to a town or literally get into the next fucking zone where you can actually find mobs to beat on to get your mana back. So, yeah, the vast majority of ways Paladins die to Hunters is they don't wear a shield and they run at them with a two-handed weapon, and they're not smart enough to hit the wildlife. You use the wildlife either to keep you out of the ice cubes or to regenerate your mana, or both, and it's just kind of GG's. Anyways, I'm in the video here. Video's already long as hell, and Data's fault.